CEE Brown in your face.
Have you heard of Everything at Once?
Do you know about Everything at Once?
It's internationally known.
Aliens listen to it.
It's the best.
This ain't a regular podcast or daily news, so stay in tune. It's Everything at Once, the place for you. Various interviews of different perspectives from the Eerie Collective to deliver a message, yeah. Whether a rapper or an event planner, baller, photographer, poet, or freestyle dancer, it's here. Forget the politics that's on the FM. Tony and Dave, you already know where to catch them. So much going on in the EPA.
Incredible content.
Everything at Once will keep you up to date.
Amazing guests.
What you doing? Come through and hang with Tony and Dave.
Community driven.
Bringing everything at once from around the way. Everything at once from around the way. Hey.
Please listen. We love you. Everything at Once.
Everything at Once.
We are so excited to bring another amazing episode of Everything at Once to you today, folks. We want to start off this broadcast with a special thanks to our Patreon producers, Brian G, Josh W, Ian D, Nick G, and Sadie M.
Patreon is an awesome way to support the show and say thanks. You can become a Patreon supporter by clicking the link below and choosing to be an intern, assistant, or producer level supporter.
That's right. For the low cost of $5, you can become an intern level supporter. We also want to shout out all the local businesses that sponsored this episode. These businesses get the Everything at Once stamp of approval and are critical members of the Everything at Once community. We couldn't do it without them. We would first like to thank AFB Services. Much like this show, they do a little bit of everything at once.
AFB Services specializes in landscape and property maintenance needs. This means they can take care of all your lawn care needs. Everything from reseeding yards, flower bed clean out, tree work, edging, and other miscellaneous maintenance needs.
Check out their website at afbservicesllc.com or give Aaron a call at 814-528-7464.
Give them a call. We would also like to thank friends of the show, Cauldron and Thorne. Cauldron and Thorne is the world's largest witchcraft store, offering a conglomerate of crystals, books, ceremonial supplies, incense, herbs, and oracle and tarot cards and self-care items.
It's a real grocery store for the soul, located just west of the Colony Plaza on West 8th Street. Cauldron and Thorne is open 7 days a week or 24 hours online at cauldronandthorne.com.
We would like to welcome our second new sponsor, Solid State Construction. Solid State takes pride in all home remodeling projects.
That's correct, Dave. Solid State specializes in bathroom remodeling, kitchen renovations, window and door installations, custom design work, and more, including painting, flooring, drywall, siding, and decks. Get a free quote today by calling Nick at 814-397-7854. Solid people, solid product, Solid State Construction. And we also want to thank our latest sponsor, Tommy's Automotive. Tommy's Automotive can take care of everything car related. Tommy's Automotive is a reliable, trustworthy service provider.
That's right. Tommy's Automotive can take care of brakes, exhaust, fluid changes, spark plugs, and all other maintenance needs.
Tommy's Automotive also does fluid film undercoating. Book your appointment today. Call Tommy at 814-384-8088. Today in the studio, we have NFL Saints superfan, podcaster, and sports enthusiast, Michael Balko.
Michael Balko. He has an incredible story about how he took his fandom for the New Orleans Saints and turned it into a successful content creation and podcasting career.
It's great stuff. We had an awesome time hanging out here with him in the studio, and we hope you guys enjoy it as well.
We know you will.
Michael Balko, thank you for joining us here in the studio, Everything at Once Studios.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
We are super happy to have you here.
Likewise, happy to be here.
Mike is a local Erie podcaster focusing on NFL and NFL-related stories, events, sports, all that stuff. we're looking forward to talk a little bit of football for you and hear about where you came from, how you got into this whole mess.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Let's get into it.
When did you start playing sports?
So I started playing sports. Let's see. I was a youngster out there. I played like a year or two of t-ball. Realized that was not good for me, nor was it good for my teammates. I think I hit like one home run and I ran the wrong way around the base.
No.
Inside the park,
Remember
though,
that kid?
we had the wheels, though. Let me tell you. We had the wheels. Dropping fly balls, picking grass, the whole nine out
Right.
there.
It's tough.
They put me in right field because I didn't know what the hell I was doing. But
The right field kid always is I feel like supposed to pick dandelions and grass. Like that's part
For
of the
sure.
right field job.
for sure,
To make sure that the field is maintained.
you got to. It's the cleanest part of the field, for sure.
Yeah, once you hit the infield, that's when, it means business. You're actually like a star player on the team.
Or the coach's kid.
Yeah, or the coach's kid. Yeah.
Exactly. My mom used to bring water and snacks to all of my like little league games.
Oh, you
so
definitely started on the infield.
Exactly. I played second base.
There you go. See, there we go. You got to have some sort of perks in there to play
Exactly.
infield, without a doubt. But yeah, so that's how my sports career started. Down south, down in Georgia, I feel like everybody plays t-ball at some point in life if you live down south.
It's a rite of passage.
Right, exactly. And then I really kind of stopped playing sports. I mean, I wrestled. At one point, I was actually the number 8 wrestler at the age of like 10 years old in the entire state of Georgia.
Wow. That's pretty serious.
Yeah, it was part of Team Extreme Wrestling.
Team Extreme.
I know, it was crazy. we took that shit serious back then. And I was the number 8 wrestler in the state of Georgia at the age of 10. Stopped wrestling for whatever reason. I don't know. I moved up to Seattle, Washington following the passing of my grandmother, who I lived with at the time. And then I started doing non-contact sports. My aunt and uncle were like anti-contact sports. So that's when I got into like the distance running. So I did cross country, track and field. I flirted with tennis. That was not great either. But mostly I was just running. So that was my forte, was distance running. I still hold a middle school record at Twin Falls Middle School for the fastest mile time. It was like a little over 6 minutes. I think it was like 6:05 or something like that.
That's pretty good.
Still standing.
For middle school, that's like pretty impressive.
Yeah,
If I can do a 10-minute mile, I'm like super pumped about it.
Oh, I can't do a 10-minute mile.
It's all been downhill from there.
Right.
It's all been downhill. I can't run a 12-minute mile now. It's crazy. So then after that, I decided to come out here to beautiful Erie, Pennsylvania.
What?
And that's when I started playing contact sports and played 3 years of football. 1 year was with Strong Vincent, 2 years with Mercyhurst Prep. And then I rounded out my high school career with a year of soccer. I played at Erie First Christian Academy for soccer. And we won the championship and went out on top. And that was the end of my sports career, kind of. Later on, my senior year, as I was going out of high school, I played 1 year of semi-pro football. And then from there, I just dabbled in flag football a little bit. Which Erie has some really good flag football players. I don't know if you guys have ever played in any of those leagues or seen them around, but Q Sports League and a few other leagues around here, they got some competitive flag football leagues. And
I didn't know there was flag football. I thought we just had like tons of softball teams. That's all I ever see people talking about.
We have softball, men's basketball, like flag football.
Soccer.
We got it all. Soccer. We have it all out here. It's crazy.
When I was in high school, I went to a collegiate academy, so we did the intramural sports. Back-to-back undefeated flag football champions. Love me some tidbits. For any of the other tidbit players listening, I still remember, So flag football glory is part of my history as well.
We love it, dude. We love it.
Absolutely. And what do you think was like during this time, were you like watching a lot of sports or like invested in like professional sports? Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously you're a journalist now, so when did like the emphasis shift for you from like playing sports to like consuming them and writing about them? Gideon. She's our production manager. She makes sure we're doing a good job.
Shout out
Gideon. Thank you.
I think so. The entire time I've like my entire life I have loved football. Like football has always been my initial attraction, and then I've always loved baseball, basketball. I love all sports in general. And actually, when I lived in Washington, funny story, I was not allowed to like follow football or
you weren't even allowed to watch it.
Wasn't allowed to do anything.
Wow.
Yeah, it was crazy. I was not even allowed to like love the idea of potentially playing football, enjoy the sport, anything like that, because it was just so aggressive, and my aunt and uncle were just not about it. So what I would do is when they would leave for work, I would like literally go in and get the newspapers and cut out like all the clippings from the sports section and hide it at the bottom of the newspapers. So I was literally digging through trash, and like I had like composition notebooks just loaded with like newspaper clippings. And
that's dedication right there.
Yeah, so I arguably knew sports better than like the average fans who were watching it on TV did. Like I knew the stats of every player. I knew every player there was to know, and I didn't even know what they looked like. Like it was crazy. And so that's just how it started. I've always had a genuine love and passion for like the statistics side of sports. And yeah, so I've just always kind of followed it. And at some point in there, I loved the uniforms for the New Orleans Saints, and they just kind of been my team since I was probably about 8 or 9, and I just kind of rolled with them the whole time. And that's just been my NFL squad, and I've just followed the NFL as a whole. And then when I came out here to Erie, obviously I was able to start watching it, and able to put all that together. And that's when I was like, all right, I'm going to do something with this. You know, I don't know what I want to do with it. I can't play to save my life. Like, you know, I had 6 concussions in the span of 4 football seasons, and that's good enough for me.
Yeah, dude.
That's enough for me. So, I was just like, you know what? I need to figure out a way to be involved in this sport some way or another. And the way I did that was by creating an Instagram account called Saints Highlights. You know, tapped into my Saints fandom, created an Instagram account, and it blew up like almost overnight. I remember it was a CJ Spiller overtime Saints victory against the Dallas Cowboys. And I posted a picture like a quick little graphic that I think ESPN posted, and I just stole it, screenshotted it, and posted it on my account that I just made. I ended up getting like 2,000 or 3,000 followers overnight.
That's incredible, dude.
And then I just rolled with it from there, and I was posting highlights of all the games, every single game, and players started posting it on their stories and all that stuff, and it just started growing, and I was able to like work with really big brands and create a bit of a just a brand of myself, really. And
does that Instagram still exist?
It does still exist. I don't own it anymore, though. It does still exist, though. It's called Saints Highlights still. I'll go into the whole story with it.
Yeah, what happened?
Yeah, so I grew it to the point where it eventually had 36,000 followers.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah, and along that span, I had worked with like really big brands like Carhartt. I worked with, they actually, you know how like people have those Carhartt NFL hats? I got the very first ever Saints one. They sent me 6 different hats, and
that's so cool.
They asked me to like take a picture and post it, and I was the first one to ever have one.
How old were you at that time?
17.
That's fucking, that's so sick.
That's amazing.
Very impressive, dude.
I worked with Budweiser whenever they were unleashing like their barbecue sauces that they had. I was the first one to ever get a Budweiser barbecue sauce. I shouldn't have used it. I should have just kept it, but I used it, and I was the first one to ever have one, or at least one of the first ones. I'm trying to think of some other really cool brands I've worked with, but along the way, I've just worked with some sick brands, sports betting agencies, stuff like that too. And it just grew to 36,000 followers. And then, you know, I met my wife, and, you know, we were looking on how to pay for our wedding, and I was like, shit, I got this Instagram account sitting here. Let's just use that. And I sold it for like $3,000 or $4,000, and
hell yeah,
and then paid for my wedding with it.
Awesome.
So it was sick.
That's awesome, dude. That's really cool. Very impressive. You're like a social media expert, much better at it than I am, probably.
And me.
Yeah, to grow from we're not even to like 200, I think, on Instagram.
On
yet.
Instagram, no.
We're killing it on Facebook, kind of.
There, we had a little sleight of hand to help out there.
We had our buddy give us the old podcast that I was on that doesn't exist anymore, that page, so we kind of combined them. So we're looking a little strong on Facebook, but it's a lot of organic and natural growth too. But that's really impressive to grow up to 36,000, dude.
It was It was a bit of luck and a lot of, dedication is really what social media is. And I wish I was as dedicated as I used to be. I'm really dedicated and strong on Twitter right now, and that's why I'm having so much success on Twitter. I wish I was as dedicated as on Instagram and TikTok, because those are the biggest areas of growth in social media right now, especially if you're posting reels and if you're staying consistent on TikTok. Like, the sky's the limit in terms of your growth.
Right.
And I wish I was more consistent. I've done well on TikTok, but consistency is so hard. And yeah,
I know what you mean. I'm lucky that lucky that we post like once a week when our show comes out, and that's about it, unless we have some other big stuff going on.
We're just old people. Tony did it at first, and I've taken this part over for the most part. Like, when we do our big posts every week, it's just like an hour, and it's just like texting back and forth. I'm like, I hate social media so much. Like, why won't any of this work for me? And it's probably just because I'm turning into an old man.
I think so.
Yeah.
Same. I mean, it's difficult to make sure that you get like all the right tags and all the appropriate hashtags and everything else, and have it line up if you're posting to like multiple sources and everything. It's definitely like a part of the job that's very important in like podcasting or any sort of like social media promotion.
It's tedious at times though. Like, you really have to love it, man. And podcasting, like, all you really want to do is get your voice out there and share your story or share whoever you're talking to, and you want to get it out there. But man, I think the only time I don't enjoy posting on social media is after a podcast, because you sit here and you do everything and you talk for like an hour and a half, 2 hours, whatever it is, and then you like edit it and you upload it and you put it everywhere, and then you got to make a social media post and you got to put effort into it, and
you got to make the graphics.
It's just, that's when social media is tedious. But man, I love it. I love Twitter so much. I think, Twitter, for me at least, I have the pre-Elon blue check, so it's a lot more fun for me. But for me, I love being able to connect with like the athletes that I'm like tweeting about, and like a lot of times I'll get retweets and likes and stuff like that. So
that's real cool.
Twitter is pretty fun for me overall. But yeah, I love social media. I love just seeing how the trends kind of evolve and form. And I don't know, man. For some reason, Twitter is just my knack. I just know how to grow on Twitter. I don't know why, but
no, it's very cool and very impressive. We don't even have like a Everything at Once Twitter. I think I might have changed the name of my Twitter to Everything at Once, and it's just sits there and doesn't do a whole heck of a lot. It's hard. Maybe it's not hard. Maybe we're just using it improperly, but I feel like Twitter is a great way to reach a national audience and build national interest, whereas our stories are not really of interest to a large audience other than people here in Erie. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I feel it. It definitely is more designed for a national audience. And I think that's why I've been featured on as much as I've been featured on, is because of that. Yeah. And in the same retrospect, right, I can't even get a podcast sponsorship in Erie, but like I'm out here being featured on all
That's
this
crazy,
stuff.
dude. We have sponsors.
I know. It's wild, bro. I can't get one. I was with Donato's for a couple years, and they've been doing some budget cuts, so they cut me. But yeah, I've been trying to get more and more. And, my podcast is a special niche because I interview athletes with the intention of getting them to share their stories of how they overcome adversity and, get them to open up and share that in a very conversational format. It's not like traditional media where, they're twisting things to get clicks and clickbait. Like I could give less of a damn if I get 800 listens on an episode or if I get 8, I just want to get the story out there because that one listener, it's going to affect somebody and change everything for them. And that's what I strive to do. And you would think advertisers would want to hop on that.
I'm really surprised they don't. Well, see, that's the thing about having a national audience. You know what I mean? It's hard to reach out to local people, I think. Whereas we're a local podcast with local people on it, and they are interested in advertising with us. Because like our consumer is all locally based. You know what I mean? We may reach only however many people, but all those people are right here in Erie for the local businesses to get to, which is really cool. That's rough, dude. I really can't believe that.
It's okay. It's okay.
I believe in you anyway.
It'll work out the way it's going to.
Dude.
We've been going strong since 2020. So eventually.
3 years.
3 years.
Yeah.
Started on 420.
Yeah, we did. Yep. 420 of 2020. Yeah, it was wild. So my wife and I were just sitting there, and I had at the time I was just doing Instagram live Q&As on the Saints highlights account. And my wife was like, we need a better format for this shit. Like, for real, why are you sitting here just doing Instagram live Q&As? And then you would try to save the video after, and you have to like screen record on some third party like screen recording app. And it was just grimy as hell, and it was all choppy. Like, I was getting huge names on the Instagram lives, like Michael Thomas at one point.
Oh, wow.
And, like, it was crazy.
That's huge.
Yeah. So I was getting like big names on those, and I had no proof of it. And I'm just like, this is dumb. And so I had actually had a Q&A lined up with NFL Hall of Famer Morton Anderson. And I was like, this cannot be another Instagram live. Like, we've got to figure something out. And my wife was like, just start a podcast. And I was like nervous about it because, you know, I've always wanted to start one, but like I got nervous because of the commitment it is, right? Like, the average podcast life is like 8 episodes, you know?
Oof.
Yeah. And so, like, you know, it feels like, you know, if you don't stay consistent with it and you announce this one big thing and you fizzle out, it's just like, oh, now you're a disappointment. It's hard to relaunch and stuff. So, you know, you just have to be consistent with it. And that was what I was worried about. But I very quickly realized that, like, with the following I already had on Instagram and the amount of connections that I've already made, I realized it would be a pretty smooth transition for me.
Right.
Not for everybody, but for me, I figured it'd be a pretty smooth one. And so we did it. My wife helped me set everything up. I was not tech savvy at all. Still not very. I've learned some of the stuff now, but I'm not tech savvy at all. And she helped me start it all up and interviewed Morton Anderson for my debut episode, and the rest is history. And now we're over 100 episodes and going strong.
It's awesome. Incredible, dude. And were you scared of, like, what was this part that was scary about being consistent? Was it like finding more guests?
Yeah, because especially with what my podcast is about, it's just like, what do I do if nobody wants to join anymore? You know, like, how do I continue to keep people interested and, you know, getting them on my show? Like, will it be the same? Because my plan all along of having my Instagram was to sell it one day. I was very informative in the Instagram selling market, like social media, people were buying them, especially like pretty big, like, third-party sites of like ESPN and Sports Illustrated and whatever, just like their branch sites were like all buying popular Instagram accounts at the time. And that's who I ended up selling mine to, was like a third-party, pretty relatively big following account group, whatever. And so I was informative of that, and I was like thinking long-term. I'm like, okay, well, like, if I sell this, you know, will I still get guests on my show? Right. But the thing that ended up being the deciding factor for me was, you know, kind of what we talked about before we hit record today was, you know, getting the college guys on who are just looking to have people listen to their story regardless. Like, whenever you're going into the draft, like, you just want to do as much media press as you possibly can, especially ones that are going to shine light on your story and how you've overcome odds. Because they post that stuff and they send it out to teams. And so that's how I started getting a following. I would interview the guys going up into the NFL draft. I think the first year I started my podcast was the biggest year I had in terms of listeners, as well as just overall draft prospects going into the draft. Alex Highsmith from the Pittsburgh Steelers is one of the notable guys from that draft class. But and that's just kind of how it started. And then those guys know guys, and, you know, all of that. And then, you know, once you hit about the 10 episode mark in like sports podcasting, if you're interviewing people, you can typically get to 20 relatively easily just off of like this person knowing a guy, this person knowing a guy, and then you just continue to grow and grow.
I think that's such a huge service probably for a lot of these guys that may not be getting a ton of press coverage or interviews, because especially like lately you see NFL players that may not be or have the right like attitude or the right like mindset to be an NFL player and to handle that kind of fame or stardom or press or money or whatever it is. And by allowing these people to shine a light on where they came from and how they got to where they're at and how they interact in a, you know, professional setting, a professional interview setting, I think it gives the prospective coaches and like talent scouts and stuff a better idea of like who they are getting into. So I can imagine they probably are pretty interested when you hit them up. Like, do you just like cold call them? Or like message him on Twitter?
I slide in the DMs, man.
Yeah, boy.
Especially Twitter for me is pretty big because, like I mentioned, I have the blue check, so like they're gonna see it like instantly. It just automatically pops to the top of your like message requests. So for me, Twitter has been where I've gotten most of my people. Instagram in the early going was my easiest one because when you have 36,000 followers on this account, it's
people see that and they're like, oh, this is official.
Yeah. So for me, I've just been kind of lucky. You know, like if you're starting a brand new podcast and your whole intention is to do what I'm doing, it's going to be difficult. Like I won't lie, just because you're going to be less inclined because they're going to look at it as what's in it for me, you know, and that's just the selfishness of, you know,
anybody. People don't want to waste their time.
Yeah, exactly. And so like, you know, if you only have 100 followers on Instagram and you're trying to hit up, you know, like some starting quarterback in the NFL, it's just not going to happen.
No chance.
You know? It doesn't even happen for me yet, you know.
Someday though.
Someday, maybe.
Oh yeah, you get my boy Derek Carr.
Maybe
get him on the show. You know,
we got Jim McMahon, former Chicago Bears legendary quarterback, so that was cool. And Geno Smith actually hopped in my last interview with DJ Fluker.
Oh man,
I was interviewing DJ Fluker, and who was a former number 11 overall draft pick back in 2013. And Geno Smith like kind of just hopped in real quick and hit me with a peace sign, said what's up. So that was cool. Yeah, that was actually one of my favorite moments of like live recording ever. So that was pretty sick. But yeah, I think it definitely helps, you know, having a bit of a following, or at least having a very good pitch. So I guess to directly answer the question, literally I just go in and I say exactly what my podcast is about. I introduce myself and I say, hey, you know, my name is Mike. I've been featured on this, this, and this. You know, I've interviewed so and so. I typically click. That's where I clickbait, right? The three biggest names I've interviewed. I say Morton Anderson, Alex Highsmith, and I say Jim McMahon, because those are the three biggest, most notable
Everybody's
names.
Everybody's going to know that.
Yeah, exactly. And then, you know, I'll kind of proceed to say, like, my podcast is all about, you know, motivating the listeners and the youth of our country to chase their dreams by hearing it from their favorite athletes and hearing it from those who have done it and are now at the pinnacle of their sports careers. And
how can they say no to that?
typically they're on board, or sometimes they'll be very brutally honest with me. Like Jim Everest is a prime example of that. We both follow each other on Twitter. He was in the NFL for years. And I hit him up one day and I was like, hey man, like, you know, we've been following each other for a while, and we would message each other too, like back and forth. And I was just like, hey man, I'd love to get you on my show. And he was like, I appreciate it, man, but with the way my career went, I don't know if I'd be much of an example. And he had like a pretty rocky off the field history in his NFL career.
He flipped the table on Jim Rome. Yeah. Well, Jim Rome kind of was asking for it, but a little bit of a temper.
And so he was just honest with me. He said, I don't think, you know, I'm the right guy for this. And sometimes that happens, but you know, I appreciate the honesty from people, and it's cool. So
for sure. Who are some of your inspirations in the sports world as far as sportscasters go?
In terms of sportscasters, I'm a big Pat McAfee guy. I mean, I love Pat McAfee, and I was actually fortunate enough to be have one of my tweets featured on his show once. That was like one of the pinnacles of my career too. Pat McAfee is probably my one of one. Like I listen to him every single day. And then
I like Jim Rome a lot.
So does Jim Everest. Let's see. And then I think just athlete-wise, I think is where most of my inspiration comes from.
Yeah.
I was a lifelong like Tim Tebow guy, Drew Brees, like those are my dudes. And I got to meet Tim Tebow when he came to Erie playing baseball. He's actually a bit of an asshole to me. You guys want to hear that story?
Boo. Yeah. Tell us about it.
Mr.
Like
can do no wrong, Tim Tebow.
Right.
So... All right, it's a good story. So I was the bat boy for the Erie Seawolves for several years, amongst other jobs with them as well. But I was working for the Erie Seawolves, and the Binghamton Rumble Ponies were coming to town, and Tim Tebow was on the AA New York Mets baseball team. Him, along with Pete Alonso, Jeff McNeil, and a bunch of other big-name New York Mets players right now. But they all came to town, and everybody else was super nice to me. Pete Alonso is still probably one of the coolest athletes I've ever met to this day. But I was the bat boy, and I was carrying the balls because whenever you're riding solo as the bat boy, you have to like play both sides, and you're always on the hitting side. So I was taking the balls, like the big old things of balls, from the Seawolves dugout to the Binghamton dugout, and Tim Tebow was like in the dugout, just kind of like getting ready. He wasn't on deck, but he was like in the hole, you know, so like the third person batting that inning. And and I like bumped into him on accident, and he was like, "Hey, watch where you're going." And I'm just like, "Bro, what?" Like,
Jeez,
I was like nervous. I was like, "Oh, my bad." Right before that game, he did a whole like damn Make-A-Wish thing in the dugout, and like all the press was there doing like a whole Make-A-Wish thing, and same dude, an hour and a half later, I bumped into him, and he like stern looked at me. You know how like when someone's serious and he just like,
Yeah.
you know?
Jeez.
But it was like scary. And then after the game, he like, you know, hit me on the ass and was like, "You're all good, kid. My
Nice.
bad." Whatever. But it was crazy. That was my first experience meeting Tim Tebow. And that was, I mean, he was my all-time favorite athlete until that moment. And then it became Drew Brees.
I guess that's why they say don't meet your heroes.
Right. They just let you down every time, bro. That's why I don't want to meet Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. I love it.
Right? I feel like he would it be impossible to like let me down even just seeing him. Even if he was an asshole to me, I'd still have like a certain level of respect for The Rock, just because I can smell what he's cooking.
I heard Adam Sandler's an asshole.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've the biggest celebrity I've ever met in person, and he's dead, was Ted Kennedy.
What?
Like John Kennedy's brother, JFK.
Oh, gotcha.
He was like a senator for a real long time, but he when Barack Obama was running for president the first time, Ted Kennedy came to Barron to do like a little like, you know, promotion or whatever, and I got to meet him very briefly and like, woo, you know.
Yeah, I don't know that I've ever really met anybody that I would consider like famous or like well known enough to be famous. Maybe someday we'll have somebody on the podcast.
I also met Jose Canseco when I was a kid, and he was a super cool. Well, that's the thing. He was a super cool dude, as nice as could be. I talked to him for like a long period of time, and you know his reputation has since tarnished a little bit.
Yes, it has. It has.
So with your show, you trying to like reach the youth and like people in general and try to motivate and inspire them. Like, what do you find to be like inspiring about like participating in sports and growing up? Like, do you feel like that has taught you any life lessons that you bring to the table in your podcast?
Yeah, so what I find inspiring is like, you know, people who grow up in, you know, unfortunate circumstances one way or another, or they have to deal with adversity at a young age, you know, and that's what happened to me. I mean, when I was growing up, I lived down in Georgia, and my mom was on drugs. I never had a dad really in my life, and my grandma, who I was living with, passed away from breast cancer, so I was then forced to move all the way across the country to a whole different place. I mean, Seattle is way different
Than Georgia, for
from
sure.
the damn deep south, you know. So I go there, and then everything is just crazy in Seattle, you know. Raining all the time, depressing. It's like #1 in the United States for suicide rates,
Jesus.
especially under the age of 18. Like, it's crazy.
That's
and
not good.
yeah, and I mean, it's just wild. And then so, you know, I like to talk to guys who have had similar backgrounds and, you know, had to overcome adversity, or maybe they grew up in a place where it just wasn't very good, you know. And I mean, Erie right now, unfortunately, is kind of one of those places for our youth right now. And so I really, you know, want to connect with the city of Erie, most importantly, and then if a larger audience hears it, then fantastic. But I really want to connect with Erie as a whole, and you know, let them know that they're not in this thing by themselves, you know. And I think, you know, everybody who's from Erie, and I consider myself to be from Erie, you know, I think they all do the same thing. Like, we see James Conner come back every year and do a football camp over at McDowell, and we see Javon Johnson, who was a longtime CFL All-Star, one of the best Canadian Football League players of all time, who's from Erie. He now coaches up at Northeast with the same mindset as me. You know, we see it all the time with like former Erie athletes come back and they do, you know, camps and clinics and give back to the community, and I want to do something similar. Now, obviously, I don't have that same following or that same skill set that they do. But I try to do it with my voice, and I try to do it on a more regular basis. And I want to be, you know, that podcast that people know that's going to inspire you. Whether you want to be inspired or not, you know, maybe if you stumble upon one of my episodes and you don't usually listen to it, and it might be the one you just need to hear, you know. I'm a firm believer in that, you know, things are that are meant to be will be, you know. And I think if you ever listen to one of my shows, you know, I think you're going to be inspired one way or another, because typically, you know, occasionally I'll get episodes that are like not very inspiring, because it's just like giraffe guys who just want to like boost themselves up a little bit. It'll just be more bland, but like 99% of my episodes are like, you know, dudes who, you know, have attempted to like kill themselves, or like dudes who have like, you know, seen their family members get killed in front of them, or like things that are like you could just not even imagine, that makes your own personal story seem like nothing, you know. And then they still are out here going for their dream job in the NFL, or, you know, whatever they're doing in life, you know, they're going for it, and they didn't let any of that adversity they dealt with at a young age, you know, stop them from doing so. And, you know, I've tried to keep that mindset in my life, and I'm very often reminded that my life isn't bad at all. Yeah. And that's what I want everybody else to feel whenever they listen.
I think that that's such a huge poor side of things with people that gets overlooked. Obviously, you have to be a world-class athlete to play in the NFL, and you have to be just like so physically demanding on yourself. But so many of these people also come from all that adversity. It's really incredible, like the amount of like hard work and persistence that it takes to be great. Yeah. You know, in sports or in anything in life, you know, I think people see like the NFL players or like the NBA players or any kind of like athlete on the screen, and they're like, oh, that must be nice. Their life's easy. Get to play a sport for millions of dollars. Blessed. Yeah. Oh, I wish I could get paid $1.8 million to play a game. But like, how much stuff like so many of these people have to go through and like survive, live in like, you know, like low socioeconomic areas, like watching people get murdered, drugs, all that stuff, and like to be able to rise from that and make themselves. It's important stories to tell.
And not only that, but like I think what a lot of people don't realize, just common fans, you know, and it's no disrespect to the common fan, you know, but like these dudes are just people, you know, and a lot of times they're being asked, and without a choice, really, you know, you are in that top 0.01% of athletes, right? And you are getting paid, but you're getting paid because your entire life up to that point has been football, has been grinding, has been a routine, has been having to cut relationships out of your life. Like a lot of these dudes, they don't know what true happiness is, whether it's because they haven't found a significant other, maybe it's because they don't know what their purpose is outside of playing the only sport that they've ever played. You don't have a strong family. So now you're going through that adversity and all you have is football. So then boom, that same guy tears his ACL. What do you do then? You know,
oh my God.
You stare at your future. You're sitting there for a year on your ass and you don't know what you're going to do next. And you're just like, what do I do? You know? And like, that's why we see so many former players turn into coaches, or they turn into analysts, because they don't know what else to do. You know, football has been their entire life. Sports in general has been their entire life, and they just don't know what to do at that point. And so you could argue that these guys almost have it as a disservice to be in the NFL, because you're getting messed up all the time. Like, you're going to retire at maximum, if you're really good, 40, you know. You're not going to play past 40, you know,
unless you're Tom Brady.
Yeah. Unless you're Tom Brady or a damn kicker or a punter, you know, you're not going to play much longer than that. You know, and then you're going to have made quite a bit of money, but still it's just like, okay, but like now you're 40, you know, all your friends that you grew up with are married. They have their own kids. They have their own families. What's more important, you know? And then you're 40 years old, your life is almost gone, and
your body hurts.
Your body hurts all the time. You know, CTE is a real thing, concussions, like how many undiagnosed concussions have you had as an NFL player? I guarantee you're over 20 plus, for sure, without a doubt. And if I honestly, I think NFL players probably get a concussion a game.
Oh, yeah, with these big, huge, you know, monster athletes just crashing into each other at full speed.
So as much fun as it is to like sit here and watch football, and I mean, I'm guilty of it too. And, you know, especially when you're in the heat of the moment, your team's trying to get a game-winning drive going, and, you know, Super Bowl, maybe you're placing some parlays, whatever the case is, you know. It's tough to remember that there's people, but I forget it sometimes too. But I think that's another reason why I really try to, you know, share the stories of guys. I want to remind people that, you know, they are people, you know. And so, I mean, I love the guys who still make it a emphasis to go out and meet people and have a plan. And, you know, the guys who retire early in their careers, like Andrew Luck, like Chris Borland a few years back from the 49ers. He was a linebacker, retired after one really good year in the NFL. You know, those guys who know what they want to do with their futures and stuff like that and have it planned out, like, that's great. But they're not all like that, unfortunately.
You know what, just real quick, you know what I would be interested in to hear from a player, because this happens more and more often. You were like, they're just human beings too. You know what happens a lot now, especially on Twitter, is with gambling being so prevalent, people lose money on games and player props, and they just at the shit out of these players. They do. And I would be lying if I said that I've never done it myself.
It happens, man. I've done it too back in my early days, for sure. Right. Back before I was definitely not supposed to be gambling, but definitely feeding other people who were allowed to gamble money, for sure.
So having this podcast and listening to all these inspirational people, what does that have? What kind of effect has that had on you? Wow, if I could say words.
Yeah. I live my life extremely blessed and happy every single day, truthfully. I work up at Sinai Sports. I'm the general manager up there over on West 15th Street, and I get to have an impact every single day in the community and help kids reach their goals every single day. And I'm married to the love of my life. We have our first baby coming on June 1st.
Congratulations.
Congrats, June. Thank you.
That's amazing.
Thank you. And I just have a really, really strong, family life. My wife's family is absolutely incredible. And I'm at a point in my life where I hear all these stories, and, I'm constantly reminded that life is really fucking good, man, and it could definitely be far worse. And I mean, yeah, I've gone through a lot of shit in my life, and I will be the first one to openly admit that. And I still go through shit sometimes, but I want to be an inspiration for others, just like others have been an inspiration to me. And, so far, I mean, I get messages frequently, not all the time anymore, but frequently that, one podcast meant a lot to somebody, and that's what I do it for. I don't make anything off my podcast. It's literally just my way of saying thank you, Erie, thank you to the listeners, and and it's just my way of being blessed to still be here talking about it, honestly.
It's a good time too. It's a much better hobby than what this table was for before it turned into a podcast table.
Depending on how hot you were running that night.
Exactly. I mean, we got the table and all the stuff, so it wasn't that bad, but there were definitely some off nights.
Hurt feelings,
guns drawn.
No guns drawn.
Yeah, no, and it's cool though. I mean, fellowship is fellowship. However way you have to do it, you know. But there's certainly some good avenues. Ain't nothing wrong with a little gambling. It's all good.
It's a good time. And we do not support minors gambling.
No.
Don't do it, kids.
Yeah,
wait till you're 18 when it's safe and legal.
Stay in those mines. No. Oh, those kind of minors. Yeah. No, children, you mean? No,
no children. Yeah. Everybody else. You're a free adult. Do your thing.
I thought you meant like coal miners. No, they can.
No, the coal miners. They're allowed to do what they want to. They work hard down the mines.
That's fair.
Cool. So, what's your college team?
College team, Florida State.
Is that the Gators?
Seminoles.
I make myself sound real stupid right here, real quick. Seminoles. Florida Gators. I just like to do the Gators.
I feel you.
Yeah,
I feel you. No, if I had to affiliate with a college team, it's Florida State. But I'm more of a player guy.
Yeah.
I don't really watch too much college football. I usually try to keep Saturdays for the fam. Sundays, it's like, listen, would you rather? My wife lays down the law, right? Would you rather watch college football all day on Saturday or NFL on Sunday? And I'm taking the NFL every single time. So.
Absolutely. Smart man.
She watches it with me. She gets into it. But if I had to pick a college team, I'm taking Florida State. But like I said, I'm more of a player guy. I like to find those stories that are really interesting and, shoot my shot trying to get them on. I get rejected a lot or just not even answered. But it's all part of it. But,
yeah, for sure.
But yeah, man, I love players and I love their stories. So that's what I really try to follow in college.
Is there any reoccurring themes that you hear amongst the players that you interview?
Damn, that's a really good question.
Oh,
you got me. Let me see. Yeah, kind of. I mean, everyone has a little bit of a different story, but sure. I think, a lot of the guys I talk to, their biggest piece of advice is always just continue to work your ass off, really. That's usually their biggest piece of advice. And then one common hardship I'd say I think about 80% of my listeners is just or the guys I talk to at least, is, injury setbacks or, some sort of early adversity, whether it's the loss of someone close to them or, an injury where what we talked about earlier, guys, it's just like, you play a sport your whole life and then you get a lot of them, like they don't suffer a serious, because they're just so damn athletic, right? They don't suffer a serious injury until like their sophomore or junior year of college. And then that's when they're like having to make decisions on their future, and they're like, oh, dang, I got 1 year left of college. I don't know if I'll be the same because I just ripped my Achilles in half. And what do I do? And so that's usually their biggest piece of adversity is like, how do they overcome, that serious injury? How did they, keep their mental right? Who did they turn to for that? A lot of them turn to their faith. A lot of them turn to their family, whatever it is, but they found their way through it. And that's typically the message I try to hammer home is just no matter what you're going through, stay strong, turn to somebody you can trust. If you don't have anybody you trust, man, if you're a man of faith, talk to the big man upstairs. Yeah. Do what you got to do, but yeah, stay strong out there.
I couldn't even imagine being on like the cusp of like $1 million career in college and having that taken away through an injury or a hit or something like that. Like the mental anguish and trauma that goes on, like that would go on in my head would be, I don't think I've ever faced anything really like that before. Maybe, but not to that like degree, you know what I mean? We all feel the same feelings as human beings, sadness, happiness, anger, and the circumstances just tend to differ. And I think that like what you do and what these people are sharing are talking about these emotions and these different human struggles, but for a lot of us, the circumstances are the only different part. You know what I mean? We felt depressed, we felt scared, we felt lonely, we felt whatever it is. And, showing people that they're able to move through it, especially when it's like such a high degree of risk. You know what I mean? Like, do I continue to pursue this and put my body at risk or my life at risk, or do I give up and try to have a family, or am I even going to be able to like compete anymore in what I thought was going to be like this amazing life-changing opportunity, as long as I could keep my head down, keep working hard for the next year or two, and then make it and get picked in the draft.
Yeah. And then like
that's like every little boy's dream, you know what I mean?
And then the craziest part is like, you have that great career and, something bad happens to you. Maybe you have some late life adversity, right? And then it's all amplified because of how good at sports you are. So like, like a prime example is dudes who are with somebody through their college career and then maybe they get divorced in the NFL, and then everyone's like, oh, damn, you're going through a divorce. They make fun of you for it. But like, bro, that's like one of the most traumatizing things for somebody.
That was
ever.
Like your rock, your grind, your fucking roll dog all through college
and then
or whatever.
You get clowned for it, and it's just like, dude, that would be so difficult. Because like for the normal person, right, you go through it and it sucks, and you get through it eventually. But
it's also not as super public all over Twitter with everybody like looking at your shit. And
you just explained the last year of Tom Brady's life.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, look at this dumbass. He unretired and now like his supermodel wife's leaving him, and there's new posts every day about like his divorce, and then they're like, why is he playing so bad?
Yeah. Like obviously might have some other things going on upstairs right now.
Yeah.
And people only have like so much capacity for like anything, you know what I mean? There's just a certain limit that the brain is capable of for any person, especially in like a highly stressed, traumatic time, you know what I mean?
And with sports, it's so interesting too, because like as fans, we're all fans, right. And like, so you're not only playing for yourself and your competitive spirit and chasing the rings, you're putting whole fandoms on your back, especially if you're like a quarterback or something, especially quarterbacks, but all players, so not only do you have to play for yourself, like you're lifting the spirits of literally millions of Americans every time you go out on the field. Yeah.
If you drop a pass, oh my gosh, like you get like shit on, man, like for every single thing you do, man. Like imagine if you're working a cash register at a Family Dollar and you accidentally like cash somebody out and you don't give them the right change or something, like imagine like that's just your job, right? And the only person who might yell at you is your boss, right? Or maybe the person in front of you, but like that's it. Like if you drop a pass in the NFL and it's, you know, especially in a pivotal moment, like you're getting shit on by millions of people, and that's just like a simple mistake in your job, right? And people just, I don't think people think about it that way, but like it's true, it's crazy.
I think that like that kind of reaction and stuff, like at that point, like you have to have like some sort of system in place to like insulate yourself. Like you shut your phone off, or you turn off all the notifications, or you do something. You just put that away. But like at the same time, me as like as a person would like want to see that, you know what I mean? And part of me would like kind of want to use that as motivation, but at the same time, it's like, how much can you take when your phone literally will not stop reacting and making the Twitter chirp or whatever, you know, whatever is going on?
So early in my like reporting career, you know, I was like, you know, you guys know what Adam Schefter does, right? Like he tries to go out there and break news, and I was doing that for a little bit. You know, I worked for a company called NFL Analysis Network. They were like directly affiliated with the NFL and had good connections and stuff. So I was doing pretty good. I had like my first 4, I nailed them, and then like I tweeted one that was wrong, right? And then the whole world was letting me know, because at that point I'd garnered a little bit of a reputation for like, okay, this kid knows what he's doing, kind of, right? And then you know, I tweeted one out and it was wrong, and the world let me hear it. And it was similar to kind of like, you know, dropping a pass in the NFL, right? It's just like my phone's going crazy. They're telling me, they're literally DMing me death threat. Like at first I was just like, yo, this is fucking crazy. And like I just turned my phone off, and it would like literally affect my actual mood. And I'm just like, yo, hold the fuck up. Like, this is dumb. And then like, you know, I kept going and persevered through it, whatever. And then like by the end of like 3 weeks of it, I was like, all right, this is just dumb.
It like didn't stop for 3 weeks.
Yeah, like I still get it. I still get it. Yeah.
Oh my god,
I still get DMs to this day. Like, and I mean, I have continued like my reporting career. I don't do it as much because I don't recommend it like at all. Like, especially if you have any sort of like mental health issues, if you're in the sports industry and you want to get into sports reporting, I don't recommend it, because Twitter is ruthless. They do not give a fuck about what they will tell you at all, and like with zero repercussions, because we know who owns Twitter, and that guy is a dingleberry. Elon Musk, shout out. But no,
he listens to this show sometimes.
Yeah, I heard. I'm gonna look at after the podcast and realize my Twitter account's deactivated.
Oh, we're gonna get online tomorrow, and on Facebook it'll just be like, you have 1 new follower, and it'll be Elon Musk. Be like, well, that's good for us, but
all of his bots were trolling and listening for this once it comes out.
Yeah, but no, it definitely is crazy. So I mean, I'm not saying I can relate, because I don't have millions of followers, but if I've ever had a little tiny sample of what that could be like, that's what it is. And I mean, it was still like upwards of like 8,000 to 10,000 people like still giving it to me. Like, I mean,
that's a lot, dude.
I don't even think I can go to the city of New Orleans. Like, it was a Saints report, so like
that's sad, dude.
Yeah,
that's your squad.
Yeah, I caught wind from a anonymous source that the Saints were interested in potentially trading for Carson Wentz. It was the year that Carson Wentz ended up like tearing his ACL, winning a Super Bowl as the backup. Big Dick Nick Foles.
Yeah, that's my boy.
Clutched it for the Philadelphia Eagles. And you know, there were like trade swirling rumors and stuff, and I caught wind that, you know, the Saints may have been interested in Carson Wentz, and I was very much wrong. That tweet ended up on like ESPN, Sports Illustrated, all of it. I was featured in like 50 different like professional ass articles. And whenever it was wrong and Carson went, like literally the Eagles like head coach, I think at the time it was Chip Kelly, literally came to the podium and was saying, nah, that guy's full of shit. Like literally, like, they asked about like the rumors of Carson being traded, and then they were just like denied everything. That's when it went downhill for your boy. So like I literally had upwards of like 10,000 people like tweeting that Balko's a bum. I was trending on Twitter because of just people shitting on me. It was crazy. Wow. But yeah, that's my little sample of that.
It's a good thing Carson Wentz didn't go to the Saints in hindsight.
Right, yeah. It really is. I'm forever grateful that he did not go to the Saints.
Oh man, how things change, dude. The Eagles fans are so ruthless, and
worst fans in the NFL.
That's what I hear. The worst, like, of all the sports everywhere.
No one here is an Eagles fan, right?
No, not here.
Okay.
If I was
Never been an Eagles fan I liked.
If one of us was an Eagles fan and you said that, we probably would have thrown the microphone at you.
Exactly. Like, you wouldn't have been leaving here.
On air assault.
Recorded for the whole world. Love it. So you do a little bit of freelance writing for a number of different sports outlets. How do you feel about the way journalism is going as far as freelance writers goes compared to like how they used to have like writers on staff?
Yeah, I think I like freelance writing because you're able to get your voice out there and you can kind of personalize whatever you want. I've always preferred it. I've written for, organizations before. It kind of sucks, because, then you're banking on your editors actually publishing your work and not publishing somebody else's. It takes the politics out of it when you're a freelancer. You can say what you want when you want, and then you get 100% of the revenue for it,
right?
Which is nice.
If they buy it.
Right. I don't freelance as much anymore. Now that I have a full-time job and, I'm really committed and all that good stuff. And, married life, you don't have much time. I don't have much time to freelance,
especially
anymore.
with a kid on the way.
Right. I really focused more on my podcast. I think that's where I moved more people. Writing, especially, I can only really speak for the sports industry, but it's really just like you have to clickbait almost. And I feel like that doesn't go with my persona. Really over the past like year and a half, 2 years, I've really tried to like distance myself from like clickbaity stuff to like really just, like who do I want to be as a person? Who do I want my son to like emulate, and it's going to be, being positive, being the
having
media,
some integrity,
not clickbaiting people, not getting people to click on an article because of a borderline
lie of a headline, whatever the case is. But you see freelancers still do it, and they do well because of it. I won't lie, that is going to be your moneymaker because all press is good press whenever you're a freelance writer. If you get them to click on your article, especially if it's multiple pages and you space it out right, and you get a view per page of your article. So if you have a 5-page article, you're getting 5 views of someone clicking through it. So in the sports industry, if you want to predict free agent landing spots and all of that, and you separate them by pages, that's a little hack right there to get 5 easy views. I don't see a problem with those kind of articles, but I think the ones that I really have issues with in freelance is like the people that'll be like, this person says this person's going here, and then they'll have like 4 different NFL players, and you have to click on it, and then it's just like, just kidding, like nobody's going anywhere.
What about the ones like I don't click on them anymore, but the like spammy articles you see on mainly Facebook where it's like, you won't believe what so-and-so did along with 25 other people, and then you click on it and it's either like the 25th one or it's just not on there at all, and that just makes me furious.
That's exactly what freelancing is kind of nowadays. I love freelancers who do it the right way. But man, like they're few and far between, most of them these days. I mean, it's a grind to be a freelancer. I mean, you have to do it all by yourself. So that's where it's tough. And so you have to generate revenue somehow, especially the people who do it to literally provide for their families. And don't get me wrong, if I was freelancing and that was my job, I would do absolutely anything I had to do to provide for my family, even if it means clickbait. But thankfully, I'm at a time in my life where I don't have to do that.
Heck yeah.
I don't hate the hustle of anybody, that's for sure.
Right, can't knock the hustle. I can knock the game, though, and I feel like a lot of times in freelance, like sports writing, news writing, anything like that, we even did a show about this a while ago, how I was seeing a bunch of inflammatory articles saying how they wanted to give children like bariatric surgery and drugs as part of these new health guidelines to fight obesity. And we read through like 6 articles, and then we read through like the source material, like the actual research paper. And it was all just like super inflammatory headline, then like, not really so much, we're kind of talking about this, but we're not doing big things. And then we read the actual thing, and it's like, oh, well, they're talking about this as a last resort, and everybody's making it sound like we're going straight to bariatric surgery for 5-year-olds that are overweight, and that's all there is to it because this is America, and everybody loves that sensationalism.
It's crazy. Like you'll literally, and you see it all the time in just anything really. You'll like hear somebody third hand mention something, and then that'll be the headline,
Right.
Like somebody will just be like, yeah, I once really liked cherries, but that's like my last resort fruit. I really love apples and strawberries, but the headline is going to be, oh my gosh, this person loves cherries. Now that's like the most dumb thing ever.
Yeah,
but it's like the same thing.
Exactly.
Like they will leave out the most important context, with headlines, and it's just like just to grab attention, and it's like it's shitty.
It's unfortunate, and I feel like nobody really I mean, you're getting clicks and views and stuff, but your reader is not happy about it, and you're not like growing an actual following. You're just an annoying dude. If anybody even reads who your name is, like the way that you're actually going to gain a following and get people who want to read your stuff is by writing quality shit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And producing like a good show, good writing, good whatever. And then like, with the way things are today, I feel like it's so available for people who do generate a following because of their quality work, such as yourself with your Instagram and all the other stuff you got going on, to like figure out how to do that in a way that serves them and serves the people, and are able to, turn a profit, even though that's not like the big thing, but it's a lot. I guess what I'm saying is the barrier to entry is much, much lower to like open a website or to buy some podcast gear or to host your show or whatever, compared to in the past when the only like media outlet was like ESPN or Sports Illustrated or CNN or whatever news company you were trying to affiliate with.
Yeah, most definitely. I definitely think, getting your voice out there, whatever way it is, if it's positive, get it out there, because we need more of it for sure.
Definitely.
So got to do it.
Gotta do it. Gotta keep grinding, dude. And I think that
gotta having catch them all.
You know it, dude. You know it. And just having a podcast and being able to surround yourself with other people is just like such a positive thing in our lives. And it looks like it's been very impactful for you as well.
Yeah, it has. I wouldn't trade, my podcasting journey for anything, really. I mean, it's incredible. Yeah, I love it. I love every day that I do a podcast. I need to do them more often. I've done like 3 this month, and I just love them.
Yeah.
Are there any upcoming names in the draft this month that we gotta be looking out for? You talk to anybody?
I usually don't keep anything in my drafts. I usually just upload them as soon as I record them. I've definitely been talking to some people. Vince Papali from the movie Invincible that has Mark Wahlberg in it. I talked to him a little bit recently. We had one planned for like a year and a half ago, but it fell through. So we're trying to get that one going, especially after the incredible year the Eagles had. And then we're going to, let's see, I have a few more draft prospects on the horizon. I also have a few XFL guys who are probably going to be NFL guys coming up. Potentially, I'm trying to think. I don't know. We'll see. Potentially Taylor Heineke. He's a good one. Just signed with the Atlanta Falcons. I've recently been working with this agency. I made a good connection with them. And, they're hitting me with some guys who are just, down to do press stuff. And I'm like, sick. He's also the same person who represents Patrick Mahomes.
Wow.
So a few years down the road, he didn't rule out the possibility of me being able to talk to Patrick Mahomes. So
That would be so huge.
I would cry.
We have like fantasy guests every now and then, like, if we could ever get this person on the podcast, we would be set. You know what I mean?
I couldn't do Patrick Mahomes. The first thing I'd tell him is that I hate him.
I don't think I could hate Patrick Mahomes if I wanted to.
No, he's a really good guy. It's annoying that he's a Kansas City Chief, and I will say that every day as a Raiders fan.
I can see that.
Tell the people where they can find your stuff.
Yeah, the Michael Balko Show is the name of the podcast. You can find it anywhere you listen to podcasts at, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Hit that follow on Spotify. As far as me personally, you can find my Twitter at Michael Balko Jr. Instagram is michael.balko.
Heck yeah. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I got one more question for you.
Hit him.
And hopefully this doesn't get you trending negatively on Twitter again. But I need to know, you're the Saints guy. Give me a projection. What's their record this year?
I think we're winning the NFC South. I think I could see 11 to 12 wins. We're looking at the Carolina Panthers is probably our biggest competition. They have the number 1 overall pick, but that doesn't always translate to immediate success. I think the Panthers are going to be really damn scary in the next 3 to 5 years. As far as this year, I think if there is a year that the Saints need to genuinely win the damn division and make a run, it needs to be this year, because next year it's probably going to be the Panthers or the Falcons, 2 rebuilding teams. I think we win the South. I think we maybe get 11 or 12 wins. It really just depends. Our schedule seems pretty easy on the surface. Obviously, this is before the draft and before some really big names have found landing spots. I think we win the South 11 to 12 wins. I think the Panthers maybe finish second. I think the Falcons finish third, and I think the Bucs finish last. The Bucs are in a complete just tear it all down. If you have Baker Mayfield as your starting quarterback, that's never a good thing. So.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody out there who listened. Thank you to all our sponsors. If anybody else wants to be a sponsor, hit us up, slide into those DMs. All of our Patreon supporters, you guys are the best. If you really like this show and you want to give back to us for all the enjoyment and entertainment you've had, hit us up on Patreon. All the links are below in the description. We love you guys. Peace.